video, I'm going to be demonstrating something called an Alap. Well, at least my version of it. Something I've been honing over several years, and I use it in my daily musical practice. And it's been a total game changer for my musicianship as a saxophonist, as an improviser, and a composer. Traditionally, the Alap comes from the North Indian classical music tradition, where it serves as this improvised rubato introduction to a piece. So with the North Indian classical music ensemble, you generally have three musicians on stage. You have your melodic instrumentalist, who's playing something like a sitar, a sarod, a bansuri flute, maybe a vocalist. You have your percussionist that's playing the tabla, which is two hand drums. And then the third musician on stage is playing a stringed instrument called the tanpura. So the tanpura is this beautiful string instrument that's played upright, and it's got a gourd at the bottom that helps resonate all the string sounds. And those strings are tuned traditionally to the roots and the fifths of the raga of the piece. Raga, for a great risk of oversimplification, is a good word for scale, but although ragas are much more complex and intricate than scales. So you have the roots and the fifths being played by the tanpura, and it provides this drone that serves as the undercurrent for the entire performance of a North Indian classical music piece. So when you go to a North Indian classical music concert, the first sound you hear is that tanpura, that drone, followed by the melodic instrumentalist who plays an alap. So again, this alap is a rubato introduction, this improvised rubato introduction, where the melodic instrumentalist introduces the audience's ears to the scale, to the raga, introduces the audience's ears to the entire piece. He's going to be playing different phrases and ornamentations based on that piece's main melody. One of the great things about a beautifully played alap is that it puts the audience in a deep listening state, which primes them for being in the right mood for the whole performance. And what I've found from utilizing the alap technique in my personal practice is it also puts me in that deep listening state, which is an essential and arguably under-discussed aspect of developing into a professional musician. Us musicians need to be able to find and maintain a state of deep listening within our body in order to create engaging musical experiences for the audiences. In other words, if we're not feeling it, they're not going to feel it. Now, North Indian classical music isn't the only musical tradition that incorporates an improvised rubato performance over a drone to serve as the introduction of a piece. You're going to find this in Balkan music from Eastern Europe, Qawwali music from Pakistan, Celtic music from Ireland and Scotland, and also various Native American musical traditions, among many, many others. And the fact that it's so widespread within different musical traditions actually speaks to the technique's universal reach. However, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to kind of stick closer to the North Indian classical music alap. Now, the way that I do alaps is not in the traditional North Indian classical music way or any of those other musical traditions I just mentioned. I've adjusted the way that I do alaps over several years to accommodate my musicianship. And as my artistry has matured over the months and years, so does the way I do my alaps. And I would encourage you, once you start doing these consistently, to adapt how you do the alaps to best fit your musicianship. Now, what hasn't changed about the way I do alaps is my ritual. I start every practice session by performing an improvised alap, beginning with singing and then transitioning to my horn. I generally play alaps for 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer, depending on how I'm feeling that day. And I always perform my alap over a recording of a tanpura drone. Now you can look up on YouTube and look up tanpura any key, and you're going to be able to find a bunch of like 15, 20, 30-minute versions of just a beautifully played tanpura on YouTube. The app that I like is called Dhwani Tanpura, which is free for Apple and Android devices. And it's a beautifully designed app. It's really easy to use. It sounds incredible. And whether you're doing YouTube or the app, it just mimics having a tanpura player sit in the room with you and engage in your practice sessions with you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to perform my version of an improvised Alap over a concert C major scale so that the tanpura is playing C's and G's as the drone. I'll begin by, just like I said, I'm going to start by singing and then transition to my horn. Now, normally what I actually do is as I'm singing over the Alap, my horn's still in my case. So I use that beginning part of the Alap to put my horn together very slowly and ritualistically. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to kind of truncate it and have my horn with me. After the Alap, I'm going to jump back on the video and I'm going to talk about a couple of key aspects of the performance that I give so that you can start to utilize it and adapt the Alap in your musical practice.
Do, re, do, re, do, la, sol. Do, re, do, re, do, re, sol, mi. Sol, mi, re, do, la, sol, ti, sol. Sol, la, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, sol, fa, sol, fa, sol, mi, sol, mi, sol, mi, sol, mi, fa, re, sol, fa, re, mi, re, do, la, sol, si, sol.
All right. So the first thing I did was I just sat and listened deeply to the drone. This is an incredibly important step. Let the sound of the tanpura soak into your body. Sit in the resonance of the drone. This is practicing what I was talking about earlier, that deep listening state of being. Now that state of being, we don't discuss it enough as music educators. When you hear a master musician of any kind, any genre, any style, you'll notice that they're in a state of total bliss as they perform, right? And it's important that we practice getting into that state, that deep listening state, before we practice, and maintain that state of being as we practice. Then that state of being will carry over into our performance. If we train our bodies to achieve it and then maintain it while we practice, then every time we perform, we can access that and be in that state of being so that the audience can feel what we're feeling. That is essential. So start by resonating, soaking up the drone, and getting to that state before one note is uttered. Okay, so then after I soaked in the drone, I began my improvised Alap by singing, using solfege, if you notice. Now, I recommend that you use solfege as well in order to be specific, but to start off, you can just scat, but don't approximate notes, or don't sing faster than you can truly hear. The importance of singing first is to be honest with your ear. Be honest about what you can actually hear. You can only sing what you can hear. And it's a scary thing at first to be totally honest with your true musicianship at this time, without the security blanket of all those sweet licks and patterns that you've been working on your horn. But by singing an improvisation over a drone, even as uncomfortable as it is, because you're finally being honest with where you are as a musician, if you get more comfortable with that discomfort and you start to make that connection between your singing and your horn, then you're going to be a much more honest, much more beautiful, much more engaging, much more present improviser and composer. And over time, you'll be able to hear better stuff, so you'll be able to sing better stuff, and then you'll be able to play better stuff with honesty as opposed to just a bunch of muscle memory licks. So then I traveled over to my horn. Now, when you do this, it's essential that you keep that musical honesty that I was just talking about. Don't get lazy and play a bunch of muscle memory stuff that you actually can't hear. Hold yourself accountable. Go slow. Truly hear what's coming out of your horn as you're playing it. It's almost as if you're transcribing yourself in real time. Let the horn be a true extension of your actual voice. You maintain that connection between your internal ear and your horn, and then over time, like I was saying, you're going to be singing through your horn as you perform, and you want that flow between what you can hear and what you can sing and what you can play to be as pure as possible. Again, listen, sing, play. And when you finally get on your horn, you almost want to be hungry for it. And that's my favorite part about starting the Alap with my horn in the case, which again, I didn't do in order to save time on the video at least. Because if you just grab your horn every time and you start with scales or etudes or whatever solo you're working on, it's almost like you're incorporating elements of shame and self-esteem and all these other thoughts kind of get into your head. Have you ever had that where you're like, I've got to work on my long tones because my tone isn't good enough? And you start your long tones and you're just sort of steeping yourself in like all these things that you don't want to do. You don't want to be out of tune. You don't want to play your scales bad. You don't want to play off the metronome. And if you're like bathing all of your cells with that shame as you pick up your horn for the first time, then think about what you're training your body to do. Every time you have a saxophone touching your fingers, that nice brass, you're training your body to have some kind of a weird aversion or hang up based on your musical practice. Whereas the Alap, you're starting from a sense of purity. You're starting from a sense of honesty, and you're starting from a sense of creation. The first thing that you're doing is you're listening, you're absorbing. The next thing you do is you sing the most honest version of musicianship there is. And then you grab your horn and you're putting that into there. When you're done with a well-performed Alap in your musical practice, you feel great. It's almost like going for a jog or doing yoga or eating a delicious meal. Like your whole body was involved in the making of something beautiful. And that's the first thing you do with the horn. That's going to translate to all the etudes and the scales and the stuff that you need to do later. Now, another benefit to doing these Alaps is going to be your intonation. Stay mindful of your intonation during these Alap performances. And this is a great chance to really feel the resonance of every note of a major scale over the drone. From doing these consistently, you're going to build a solid foundation that is based on your ear, not your eyes. As a quick aside, I don't like to encourage young musicians to rely too heavily on those visual-based tuners such as strobes or needles, because you don't use your eyes on the gig. You use your ears on the gig. And in fact, you use your body's innate ability to sense sound waves as they resonate through the air in order to understand what's in tune and what's not. It's a magic power, being able to sense that, and something that lies nascent inside of every musician, but you got to work on it. You have to develop the ability to feel it, develop the ability to hear it so that you can really resonate your pitch. And so I would recommend going away from terms like being in or out of tune and moving towards concepts like, am I in resonance or out of resonance? Am I resonating with these drones? And then that's going to carry over into your performance. Now, when you start off with your Alaps, I would recommend just sticking with major scales, but do cycle through the different keys. So what I have is I have a stack of 12 flashcards with a different key written on each card. And once I cycle through all the different keys, then I shuffle them so that I perform my Alaps in a different order every time. Keeps my brain fresh. Because this part is a really important aspect of the Alaps. You don't know a key unless you can improvise in it. I'm going to say that again. You don't know a key. You're not going to be fluent in a key until you can improvise in that key. I don't care if you're a jazz player or a classical player. I think that's incredibly true. So think about it like this. People are always asking you to learn your scales. Learn all your 12 scales. Learn your 12 scales. Well, that's great, but that's only one specific way to play through that key, up and down. And it's not even a melody. You'd be hard pressed to go through music and find a composer that wrote a melody that sounds like this. Do, 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 dee, da, 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 do, 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 do. No one's ever written that melody. They've written like da, do, 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 dee, do, do, dee, do, 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 dee, do, do, da, dee, da, da, da. There's all kinds of things. Mozart wrote a bunch of scales within a piece, but never do to do, back to do in the lame rhythms that we've been learning our scales in, right? So why play something that's amusical in order to become a better musician? Another way to put it is, I can get a phrase book of Spanish phrases and learn 50 phrases and go to Mexico, and I would be able to say those phrases, but God help me if someone says something back. God help me if I need to say something in a way, to phrase it in a way that actually contains emotion and contains like how I'm actually feeling about the thing that I'm saying, right? The only way to be fluent in a language is to go there and improvise with people that speak that language. I feel the same way about scales, about keys. So if you really want to learn your 12 keys, you got to improvise over them. And this is my the best way that I know how to do that. Put that drone on, sing and play, and then you'll really understand how the scale works from top to bottom, middle out. Once you get really comfortable playing Alaps in different keys using the major scale, you can start to branch out, developing your own style. You can incorporate other modes. You can play Alaps over, using different scales, different ideas. You can even dip your toe into like Indian ragas and play Alaps that way. Either way, I want you to make it your own. Once you understand the concept and you get the app or you get the sound of the tanpura in your head, then you're going to start to utilize it and let it morph so that it adjusts your musicianship, your artistry, and where you're trying to go to as a musician. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you got some good stuff from it. And I might be making a couple more Alap videos as we go on to show some different ways that you can incorporate it. And I hope you all have some really happy music making. And thank you very much for Antigua Winds for helping me make this video. All right, take care, y'all.